Hello, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to another edition of The Next Step, the podcast where we take your recruiting, employer, brand, talent acquisition challenges and find ways to use AI to make your life a little better. And today we're doing a real meta episode. I'm not talking about the software company or the social media company. No, I'm talking about we're doing an episode about an episode in a way that we've never done before. You'll see. It'll be a lot of fun. By the way, be sure to subscribe. If you're finding this very useful, valuable, you're applying these ideas to your actual work, let me know. Let somebody else know. Pass the podcast along, whether it's on YouTube or it's on a podcast, which you should be able to find us on most podcast networks. There you go. Also, just as a heads up, I made a really interesting video. I say interesting. It was funny. It was one of those moments where I went, oh, this is a good idea. This really helps me explain this idea I've been trying to explain for a while. And I did an employer brand video for Lumen. That's Severance's Lumen. It's really designed to show how most people build employer brands and better ways to build employer brands. And I used a fictitious company. That way I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. So hopefully Ben Stiller will not sue the pants off me, which would be bad on a lot of levels. So I'm going to make a link. I think I'm going to try and put a card somewhere here. I see people on YouTube do that. I don't know how to do that. I guess I'm going to figure that out. All right, let's get to it. Full disclosure, I take no money from anybody to do this podcast. It's not sponsored. This is just me trying to help everybody kind of leverage the AI tools that I'm finding some value with and hope that you will find some value with. I know AI is scary, and that's actually the subject of today's episodes, because today's episode, as you know, is we look at podcasts or real-world TA challenges and we say, how can we apply some interesting ideas using AI? And today's episode is of, it had to happen eventually. Chad and Cheese. Yes, they're AI sessions on YouTube, not actual podcasts, but on YouTube. I will put a link in the show notes somewhere with Rebecca Volpano of Cielo, and they have a really nice conversation about the challenges of embracing AI. And the big challenges that they talk about, let me look at it because I transcribe it and then I ask, ChatGPT to tell me what are some of the challenges. Interesting challenges. First off, AI paralysis. Leaders don't know, leaders know they can't fall behind, but they're worried that they're going to mess it up. They don't even know where to start. Spoiler, point them to this podcast. Anyway, tech stack decision overload, stakeholder buy-in gap, data to insight breakdown, speed to cost. Look, the way this is broken down, the challenges uncovered here are daunting. And we're going to focus on the issue of AI paralysis and tech stack decision overload. Here's the thing. AI has been sold to all of us first as a funny chatbot, which wasn't actually that funny. In fact, it couldn't even write that well 2 years ago. But now it's pretty good. It really does some good work. Anyway, now we're being sold these $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, $250,000 tools that have AI in them or are built on AI, and we think that's the way in. And that is a way in. There's nothing wrong with those tools. Shout out to the stuff I saw at Smart Recruiters yesterday. Just interesting stuff. Interesting to see the future of how this is going. But the truth is we don't have to go that far. Not to start. In fact, making that your first step, yeah, that feels like the right way to do it, only in that you've got a lot of support. But in the end, if you don't think in AI, if you're not really approaching these AI challenges on your own time and playing around with them, you're going to be hard pressed to make good, smart decisions about the big tools, which is why I think you should start small. Start with things like this. So I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. AI paralysis. How would I help someone in AI paralysis aside from starting a podcast and doing this? Did I say it was meta? Yes, I told you it was meta. But then I thought, one of the challenges, I think, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong, one of the challenges is that AI is very black box. Literally, you go to Claude or ChatGPT, it's a black box. It's a black screen, right? You don't know. You type in your instructions, you're like, what am I getting out of this? You don't know how it works. You don't know why it works. You just know that you're getting a response, and everybody hears the stories about hallucinations, and spoiler, it's all hallucinations, but most of them are good. But you don't know what to take seriously, and you're like, gosh, if I do like what newspapers did and try to write a whole article on books to read this summer and not one book was an actual book, idiots. Do you not have copy editors? Do you not have come on, people, you have professionals for this. Anywho, if you do that, you're going to look like an idiot, and everybody's terrified of looking like an idiot. Maybe me less so, apparently. And I get that. I totally get that. So you don't know how to use these tools. And you're like, well, I would love to use them to write better emails, but how do I know that's the right email? How do I know I'm not screwing this up? So we're going to take a particular circumstance and show you how AI, kind of in the quiet of your own office or dining room or bedroom or however you want to use it, can give you better feedback without any concerns that you're showing off bad stuff or you're making a fool of yourself ultimately. Okay, so here's the challenge. I thought back to a real world situation I was in a couple years ago when I was working in-house, and we wanted to, I say we, it was mostly me, I'll own that. I wanted us to be very comfortable offering candidates feedback. Yes, it's that conversation. I know we're also thrilled to have that conversation. And the litany of people who told me, no, you can't, never, we'll get sued into the ground. How dare you? Recruiters can't be trusted, blah, 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 blah. And I went out, online, and went to my networks and said, hey, who's actually giving feedback? And it turns out nobody. It's like teenage sex. Everybody says they're having it, but turns out nobody actually is. Everybody's talking about it like they know what they're doing. No one's actually doing it. The handful of companies I could find that were doing it weren't telling their HR, and they weren't telling legal, and they weren't telling comms. They were just kind of doing it on the side, right? Like, hey, just helpful hints, here's what's going on. And they all knew that the second legal or HR found out that it was kind of a process, they were in for some trouble, even though it's a great example to say, hey, look, we didn't get sued yet, so maybe this is not as scary as you think. So I thought, okay, that's a real challenge. That's a real issue. And I know a lot of employer branders and recruiting leaders would love to be able to offer feedback. It's a smart thing to do. It's a great way to build goodwill, to give candidates feedback who generally are used to just getting the standard form letter, which sucks. Okay. So I said, okay, if I'm a TA leader and I want to have this conversation, I want to get this off the ground, I do not want to go into that conversation cold. We're going to have to loop in head of HR, head of legal, maybe rec ops, depending on our situation. And we're going to say, okay, we have an idea we'd like to bring to you that we'd like to talk about in an informal way. I know you're initially going to be against it, but I want you to listen and have a conversation. And let's be fair, that's a conversation where you should just go ahead and walk in with helmet and pads, right? You are about to get beat up. These are teams who are not comfortable with change, who do not want to hear new things. They do not want to be involved in this stuff. And the concept of giving candidates feedback when they absolutely don't legally have to is anathema. They do not do this. This is not something they willingly choose to do. So what I did is I went to our old friend ChatGPT, version 03, and I said, hey, I have a recruiting issue that I'm worried. I'm literally reading the prompt. I'm worried we'll get stopped, Freudian slip, by HR, leadership, and legal team or the recruiting operations team. Help me anticipate issues by having a conversation with those three functions around the issue of giving candidates feedback when they don't get the job. Please ask any necessary questions before beginning. All right. You're at home. You're on the bus. You can do this on the bus. Why not? You can do this anywhere. You can be in the dark if you feel scared. Like if you just want to kind of be away from anything that's scary. Do it on your own. This is completely designed to help you think through challenges and prepare yourself better for conversations like this. So the first thing that happens is ChatGPT says, well, okay, I got a couple of quick questions. And the questions were good. One, what's your hiring footprint? Because that's going to set legal questions like how likely are we opening ourselves to a lawsuit here? Good question. What is the role mix? Are we talking about entry-level people, in which case, feedback may not be as useful? Or are we talking execs? Are we talking about technical? What are we talking about here? What is our current policy? So it's going to evaluate a current policy if we have one to kind of say, okay, this is what the gap is from where you are to where you want to be. What is the depth of feedback you're considering? A question that I swear when I had this conversation in real world, no one asked, which was mind-boggling. I swear that everybody, when I had this conversation, all thought I was going to go through their resume line by line and tell them how they were bad. I'm like, I know I'm a little brusque and I'm a little goofy, but I'm not an ass. No one ever asked that question. God only knows what assumptions were being made there about what kind of feedback we want. I was just thinking back to, being a candidate myself. All I want to know is there one thing that makes me better for the next time? Just give me a little forward progress and I will be your fan forever. Not that hard. Next question. Risk appetite or culture? Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a good sense. And I said medium. Tooling, data sources. Does your ATS already have some sort of interview platform that captures scored rubrics or structured notes? Okay, if you've got a scorecard, legally, as someone can subpoena you for that information anyway. So maybe if you have a scored metric or rubric, it's not as scary to open this stuff up. Interesting question, right? Finally, are there any union or government contractor considerations from a legal standpoint? Great. I answered those questions very simply, and it thought for a little bit, and it said, okay, I'm going to simulate a round table around the question of should we give post-interview feedback. It named Sarah, head of HR strategy, Jordan, senior counsel of employment law, and Maya, manager of recruitment operations. And then it just does like a scripted David Mamet play. Like, it's great. You almost want one of these people to say, feedback's for closers, right? There's one of those things. I'm being funny. I'm being facetious because David Mamet makes me laugh. He's insane, but separate conversation. We could do that for a while. But it has, hey, here's the kickoff. Here are the initial reactions. Here's what the challenges are. You can see HR says, yeah, candidate experience is a win, sure, but only if it's fair and doesn't blow up in our equal opportunity metrics. Consistency is my number one concern. Okay, that's HR's. That's how HR sees things. That makes sense. Legal says, hey, we got a litigation ammunition. Anything we send is discoverable. One sloppy phrase can fuel a discrimination claim. Valid, but now we're stating it. Also, inadvertent disclosure of proprietary information, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying no, but it might be a tight templated and scrubbed, which almost defeats the purpose. And then it goes into risks and logistics. And it says, hey, on the topic of template versus freeform or scorecard transparency or training or timing, it shows each person and what concerns they have. This is a map for you in your bedroom, in your office. No one has to see it to understand what you're walking into. Now, 50% of this you already know, but I can guarantee you almost certainly there are one or two things here that you did not think of. And honestly, you're a recruiting professional. You are not a lawyer. You are not expected or trained to think like a lawyer or like an HR leader or like, who was last night? Rec Ops, right? These are very different perspectives. And to be fair, the better you are at your thing, the harder it is for you to kind of pull your brain out of your thing and put it in someplace else. And this is where a ChatGPT can really do a great job opening up your eyes to potential challenges, potential concerns. It then goes on to what are some counter arguments and resolutions. So if HR is concerned that what if managers go off script in phone calls? By the way, why are the managers giving feedback? Interesting question. The ops team says only written feedback might be allowed. Phone calls need to have HR present. Okay, now we've moved from no to, okay, maybe if. Yes, if. And for me, I know I'm from Chicago, and yes, and is our might as well be on our flag in the third star, right between the World's Fair and burning a building, burn the city to the ground. These are Chicago jokes, folks. Don't you worry. We can talk about Pequods separately. Watch the bear. I don't know what to tell you. You've gone from no's to yes, if. This is possible if these criteria are met, which is a way better conversation for you to have. Now, let's pull back. This isn't about feedback. This is never about feedback. The conversation here between you and I is about how do you use ChatGPT to uncover hidden landmines in these conversations. That is what this is all about. You're going to walk in any meeting. Hey, I could have replaced HR leadership with COO. I could have replaced legal with social media. I could have done 7 of these personas. I could have really kind of broken this down. You can say, okay, we want to make this change. Hey, ChatGPT. Our company is 1,000 people big. We have these teams, and you can kind of sketch that out. You don't have to go too far into detail. In fact, if you want to, you can even point your About Us URL to ChatGPT and says, this is what we're about. Maybe it says something about your culture, and it kind of infers things. Say, hey, from a recruiting standpoint, we want to make the following change. Please identify potential roadblocks, hazards, and obstacles that might come up from individuals who are stakeholders in this. And then you might list your Reiki chart or RACI chart or whatever you want to call it, or just list who your stakeholders are, who's responsible for stuff. And it will say, hey, from a CFO standpoint, the following challenges or concerns are going to be bop, 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 bop. Okay, great. Now you know what to plan for. Now you can think through. Here's the deal. If it's wrong, who cares? You're just better prepared. You've been forced to think through your request from different perspectives, therefore making you a better leader because you are better armed in the big conversations. Let's be fair. Most TA leaders are recruiters who got elevated And the job is radically different. You're not sourcing, you're not, filtering through the ATS. You're having conversations with executives and hiring managers and thinking systemically, and that's a big shift. You weren't trained necessarily for these big conversations, and this is a great way for you to uncover obstacles, concerns, issues, roadblocks, landmines, whatever you want to call it. And there's no downside. There is no kind of opportunity for you to get screwed up or to show your underwear or do whatever horrible thing you think is going to, in your head, what if this goes wrong, right? For every good AI is amazing, there's at least 3 stories about how AI is terrifying and for the following reasons. And I get your concern. I get your wariness to dip your toe into these waters. I'm fine if you say, you know what, I'm terrified that if I let my ChatGPT write all my job postings are going to sound horrible. Fine. I disagree. But fine, there's not just one way into AI thinking. And that is what this is. This isn't about how do you solve problem X. It's about how do you expand your perspective so that you can see the world from other people's point of view better in anticipation of the actual meeting so that you have better arguments, you are better prepared, you can kind of anticipate where things can go, and therefore you become a better leader. And don't you want that? Don't you want that? Because I want that for you. Why don't you want that for you? All right. Okay, not too long of an episode, pretty straightforward. Thanks so much, ChatGPT and Rebecca Fano, for having this conversation and letting me kind of just scrape it. You didn't let me. I just did it because that's how the internet works. I just scraped it. I dropped the transcript into ChatGPT and it came up with these issues. Please subscribe if this has been useful. There are hundreds of thousands of recruiters, recruiting leaders, and employer branders who need to know about this stuff because AI is coming. Like, this ain't no fad. This is not, the internet in 1994. This is today. This is now. It is something you need to be embracing. And I know it's terrifying, and I know it's daunting, and I know it's a big Megillah. I know it's a whole big matzo ball to kind of grab all at once. Don't. Find a thread on that sweater and start pulling. And this podcast is designed for exactly that. If you've got your own challenge you'd like to see how AI could potentially help, let me know. I'm James Ellis. That's what I do. I want to help you out. I use AI all the time in my own business, and I'm just here to kind of bring what I'm learning to y'all because I think it might help. It helped me. I suspect it will help you all. Be sure to tell people, be sure to subscribe, let people know, send me your questions on LinkedIn or just drop them in the chat or in the, not chat, there's no chat here. Where am I? In the comments of YouTube or wherever. And I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you later.